quick start. Oh, yeah. All right.
I tell you what, a person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish what we were discussing yesterday. And so forth and so on. Okay, so yesterday, of course, we were talking about thinking out the box as far as preparation is concerned. And, you know, I just really hope that you can escape this habit that students have with preparation. They prepare for the SAT in totally the wrong way. It's not an accident that students are constantly getting the same scores, whether they're good or whether they're bad. And you'd be shocked. Some students that even I assume are good students, very strong with the language, they're getting pretty much the same scores as students who are weak with the language. It's not an accident. This is all about the approach that students are having about preparation. They're putting too much focus on this standard, getting a prep book or getting a tutor, and focusing only on the test. There's too much of that. Not enough of preparing out of the box, doing the hard things. And I didn't mention it yesterday, and I actually want to mention it today, and we can go ahead and get back to where we stopped yesterday. But I didn't mention it yesterday, but I want to mention it today, and that is the structure of the test. Meaning that, okay, so they made this test, but where did they get the idea of what to put in the test? Because this test is not completely separate from what you do in school, from what you learn or have learned since you have been studying English. It's not completely separate from that. They get the idea of what to put on the SAT from what students cover in school. And how do I know this? Well, the CEO or the president of the College Board, before he became president, he led the organization to update the English curriculum in America. It's called the Common Core. He led the organization that developed this curriculum. Immediately after this curriculum was completed, this national curriculum called the Common Core, he was asked to lead College Board. And his first announcement after becoming president was to talk about how he's going to change the SAT, how the next SAT, the one that your class is going to take next year, how it's going to change. And he said very specifically that he is going to make the new SAT mirror the Common Core curriculum. So this test is exactly what students cover in high school. So it's not a separation. And the things they do in high school in preparing for university. And the second thing that he said he wanted your preparation for the SAT to be also at the same time a preparation for university. This was his goal. This is what he felt that the old SATs in the past didn't really do. although they claim to do it, but he wanted to make it more that way. He also said that he wanted to make preparation for the SAT less about buying books and taking expensive courses and more about focusing on what you do in school. So he teamed up with Khan Academy to make preparation free so that students don't focus so much on taking some expensive course. So this idea of preparing out of the box is really the same idea that you get in school for improving your level. Doing those things that improve your level. Doing the things that teachers constantly harp on, especially English teachers, which is to read more books in your free time. So I didn't mention that yesterday. I wanted to mention it today. So let's finish what I was saying. Okay, so I hope I encouraged somebody yesterday who didn't have like a book they were reading right now to read a particular book. I hope I did that. And if you did that, I'm really happy that I was able to motivate you. But I have to say again, and I want you to pay real close attention, that there is absolutely no way to improve your reading level other than reading. And there's no way to improve your ability to master this test outside of improving your reading. It's just not going to happen. You could try to do it, but it's not going to happen. You're going to have to do the hard work. The hard work, and I don't want to like say it's hard work. It's actually what you're supposed to be doing, which is reading. This is a really big focus. There's not an accident why the president of the College Board decided to make this test primarily reading math and put more focus back on the reading, because focus has gotten away from reading, globally. Students just don't read as much as they used to. Even when I was in high school, you had to do a lot of reading, but now students, they don't like to do reading. I mean, there's so much other things going on that you can do, watching movies and YouTube and all that stuff, that it takes you away from your time. And that doesn't even include the stuff that happens when you go outside. It's so much. Teenagers now being bombarded with all of this stuff. This sensory stuff that excites you and makes you interested, but reading becomes like something that is not exciting. But you have to make it exciting. So I'm telling you, you have to make it exciting. Increase your cultural awareness. We said that yesterday. Helps exercise your brain to pick up on details. I'm telling you, the more you read, especially when you're reading as entertainment on your own, interesting books. When you're reading a book, I don't know, maybe it's a novel about, some detective, something like Sherlock Holmes. And as you're reading, you're trying to figure out who did it, who committed the murder. So you're really paying attention to everything because you want to know what it is before you actually find out at the end of the book. So you're really paying attention to all the details. Believe it or not, that is practice. But 80% of the text on SAT is non-fiction text, arguments being presented. And we all know, as we discussed, that when an author presents arguments, he produces evidence in order to support his position. That's what the questions are going to be about, that evidence. Detailed questions, definitely going to ask you about specifics in the text. So if you haven't practiced your mind and your brain to remember details by reading other stuff, you're not going to be able to do it when you sit down with the SAT. It's just not going to happen. You're going to read it, and at the end of what you read, you're going to be like, I don't even remember what I just read. I mean, just like that. You don't remember anything. You have to actually read it again. And you have time to read it again, because that's when you start losing minutes. That's when you start losing minutes. That's why most students, they can't get through the whole test. They come up 15 minutes short. They don't even finish the last passage. They only get to the last passage because they ran out of time. And that's because they have to read stuff 2 and 3 and 4 times because they didn't practice their mind previously to remember details. But when you read interesting books, you remember details. If it's a good book, you don't have to go flip back and find out, wait a minute, let me flip back. Did I miss something? No, because you already remember. You remember everything. They're very detailed. Some students absolutely fell in love with a book like The Hunger Games. They can tell you today the details of it, of the book. They can tell you what details they left out of the movie that was in the book. I mean, that's because they were really interested in what they read. How to beat a test where you're reading stuff that you're not interested in is you have to practice so much remembering details from the stuff you read that you are interested in that it becomes a second nature. If it doesn't become a second nature, then you're not going to be able to do it on that test. Trust me. 90% of the text you're not going to be interested in on the SAT. 90%. And that might be a high number. It's not going to be interesting. So you have to have just a habit of remembering what you read. Remembering what you read enables you to extrapolate. This is a very important word that you need to know, extrapolate. It means to take information that you know, compare it to information that you don't necessarily know or is new to you, and be able to come to conclusions, to extrapolate. Being able to extrapolate takes remembering details. You have to remember stuff. You can't forget stuff. It's the number one problem with students taking a reading test. They can't remember what they read. Number two is understanding what they read. That's number two. The first thing is remembering what you read. Because if you think about it, if you can't remember what you read, you're not going to understand it. Even if you can remember it, sometimes it's hard to understand. But that first thing has to be remembering what you read. It saves time, loads of time. If you have to read a passage twice, then you're taking twice the amount of time that it takes to read the passage, and then you just wasted. Where are you going to get that 10 minutes from? You ain't going to pull it out. This guy can't stop time for 10 minutes. So that means that somewhere in the test, you got to make up for that 10 minutes. And sometimes that's impossible to make up for the 10 minutes. You can't. So you end up being 10 minutes short, rushing, guessing on a bunch of questions because you didn't read a passage at the end. I mean, so forth and so on. So, but that's on test day. Before test day, you're supposed to be practicing that art of remembering what you read. And you can't do it by not reading. It just does not happen. Okay, so extrapolate. You have to make extrapolations based on context easier. And the way you do that is that you do a lot of reading. Remembering details. You know, you learn a lot. Now, okay, so in America or anywhere, not only in America, globally, and we talked about this yesterday. This idea of someone who is read. And I'm not talking about the color red. I'm talking about someone who reads a lot. And you can talk to a person and tell whether they have done a lot of reading before. You know, people have done a lot of reading before. They remember a bunch of facts about stuff, even just silly facts, like the national butterfly of Denmark. You ever watched Jeopardy before? Anybody ever watched Jeopardy? The show Jeopardy. They don't have it in syndication on cable here. Really? That's weird. The most popular game show in America is Jeopardy. And it's a very simple premise. You get 3 people and they compete with each other answering questions. They don't know what the questions are going to be, but it's usually questions, facts, academic. It's not a silly game. It's a very serious game. But the point being is that the people who are doing this show, the people who are playing this game, are very intelligent people. Like, you think they're like geniuses. But some of them aren't. Some of them be like housewives, construction workers. It's not some professors and stuff like that. But the point being is that they just have a knack for reading and remembering. So they do a lot of reading. So they win this game by being able to answer stuff like the national butterfly of Denmark. Now, who would know that? Some people, they read so much that they read stuff like that, those little abstract facts, and that's how they win this game. They win hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they win this very popular game because they do a lot of reading. Obviously, a game like that, you can't be successful in a game like that without having done a lot of reading prior. Okay, so you're going to make critical reading and writing sections more enjoyable when you practice your reading outside of reading some practice tests. You're going to make it much more enjoyable. Much more enjoyable. Because if you have to, look, one of the keys to being successful on the SAT is enjoying what you're doing. And I think that's one of the keys in probably every aspect of life in order, to be successful. You have to enjoy what you're doing. Have you ever been in a competition and you didn't like what you were doing, but you won? A competition. Who's been in a competition before? Nobody. Never competed for anything? Never won an award? Okay. You had to enjoy what you did prior to you doing it. The same applies for the SAT. The same applies for a reading test. You have to enjoy reading. That, in turn, will make you enjoy the reading that you're doing. So, when you become like an avid reader, you're not concerned about whether you like what you're reading prior. Most avid readers, and some, they get to the point where they read so many books, so they just pick up a book and they say, I'm going to read it and see if I'm interested in it. And sometimes they might get halfway through the book and say, Actually, my daughter did that. She bought a book about a week or two ago, and she just bought it because she just liked the cover. And she started reading. She got halfway with the book and hated it for little details about the character and stuff like that. But the point being is that when you're an avid reader, you're not turned off at the thought of reading. You don't get turned off from what you're reading until after you have read it and said, I didn't like the argument that was presented. I didn't like the plot or something like that. This is what I mean by practicing your reading so much that you always have a benefit, or you always give a benefit of the doubt to the text that you are going to read. So you like it initially until it's proven not likable. And this is the attitude that you have to go towards the SAT with. You have to like everything that you read, because we remember more when we like it. We remember less when we don't like it. It's easy for us if we have already done a lot of reading, so we're not concerned about whether it's going to be like tiresome on our eyes and our mind while we're reading, because we like reading. So we're able to give what we're about to read on a reading test the benefit of the doubt, and we find the enjoyableness in it. And then you have to do that. It allows you to come up to think clearly too. Now, when you do a lot of reading on your own, you do a lot of thinking about what you read. These are just automatic things that we do. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, everything has a purpose. Every author has a purpose in writing. And every author has things that they have in their writing that makes you think about life, think about society, think about, who you are and what you can be and all, so forth and so on. So the more you read, the more you think. And that in itself is a practice, because when you're taking a reading test, that is the goal of the reading test, to have you to answer questions. And those questions you have to think. So if you're not used to thinking and reading, when you sit down to a test, it's not going to just happen just through osmosis. All of a sudden you love reading and thinking and you have, no, it's not going to happen like that. It's going to be one big giant struggle. You're not going to be able to think clearly because you don't have practice in thinking about what you read. So it becomes a really, really tiresome, difficult task. I guess that's the best way to put it. Okay, so read often, read a lot. My final point. Read often, read a lot. And when I say read a lot, I'm talking about 3 hours a day. People laugh when I say it. If you're preparing to take a reading test, that's the kind of reading you should be sacrificing every day. 3 hours a day, that's a sacrifice. But it's a sacrifice that you have to make if you want to succeed. I'm gonna put it like that. If you want to succeed with this SAT, you're gonna have to read, and you have to read a lot between now and then. You have to catch up on all the time you missed. You know you didn't read last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. So now you gotta catch up. You gotta get ready. You got to sacrifice everything. You got to put everything on the line. Summer break? No. There is no summer break. It's more reading time. A period of more reading time. Now you got extra time now. Instead of now we might have had 2 hours a day. June, July, August. Now you got 10 hours a day. Because you got that kind of time. All right, okay, you think it's cute, but I'm telling you, take the advice. That's all I'm saying. Take the advice. Okay, so evidence. We talked about it. Evidence. Does everybody know what evidence is? Everybody know what facts are, data, stuff like that? Yes? Okay, so evidence-based questions. They are broken down into 3 basic categories. These are the questions you're going to find on the SAT. These are actually new questions. They weren't on the SAT that I took. They weren't on the SAT that was taken 2 or 3 years ago. These are new. But they're not new in the world of standardized reading tests. But they are new to the SAT. Why are they necessary? Well, because 80% of the text is non-fiction. Non-fictional tests usually are essays, journals, scientific studies, stuff like that. And all of those are considered academic. And academic writing requires the authors to present evidence and facts to support their positions. Now, why are they telling us that we have to start reading academic texts? Well, it's quite clear, because the president told at the very beginning that this SAT will also be preparation for college. So as you're preparing for the SAT, you're also preparing for college. And in college, that's all you read is academic, non-fictional texts. This is what happens when you go to college. Okay, so questions that assess theme and central ideas. Questions that assess knowledge of vocabulary, and questions that assess syntax and structure. These are the 3 types of questions you're going to find on the reading section that deal with evidence. Evidence. Now these questions assess, meaning that these questions can tell the person who looks at how you answered it, these questions can tell them how well you read the material, how well you understood it, how well you got the concept, how well you saw the purpose, and how well you analyzed what you read. Now, what do these questions do? They require students, of course, to learn to read complex text, to go beyond the Hunger Game books, to read more academic type of material, challenge themselves, to read independently by themselves, to improve their proficiency. Proficiency includes time and your ability to remember what you read. That's both what that is. Time and your ability to remember what you read. Because when you remember what you read, you save time. But you cannot improve your proficiency in reading if you do not read a lot, and if you do not mix the type of material that you read. You can't only read fiction novels. You have to also include non-fictional texts, essays, studies, articles, so forth and so on. Now, I wish I could tell you something that will ease your mind, something easy to do that's easy for you and it'll work every time. One thing that you can do that'll make it happen for you, and you take the SAT and you get a 1350 the first time. Yeah, but I did already. I told you. Read. That's it. There it is. The secret thing that students all over the world who have to take the SAT ready to pay thousands of dollars for, I gave it to you free. The secret knowledge that only English teachers know. And that is read. There you go. So now you're ready to tackle your preparation. I'm really happy that nobody in here is an Islamic school.
I'll talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, that's rolling the hard way. We don't want to roll quite that hard. We want to get one of them little minibuses.
What's up?
A person who believes that this wasn't set up by our own government is an idiot.
Everybody's gone out of their mind.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class.
Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome to Mr. Quick's class. Welcome, Mr. Quick's class.
Oh, yeah. All right.